Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Plug in Play podcast. I am your host, Henry, and we're here to talk about some video games. I hope that Valentine's Day treated you well, that wonderful holiday that the greeting card companies thought up to sell us a variety of things, and boy, does it work. I hope somebody bought you something, maybe you bought somebody something, or maybe you just stayed at home and played video games all day, which are all viable options to do on February 14th. No judgment at all. But this episode is jam-packed. We got, the big one, obviously, the Sony State of Play. Honestly, wow. Like 35 different things were shown in about a 45-minute window. Packed. This is the majority of the show is dedicated to that, no doubt. We got Multiversus shutting down, PSN down too, and hey, a couple other fun things around the bend from that, and of course, we got impressions coming up too. This one's going to be an interesting one. We got a narrative-focused impressions episode here, and by that I mean all sorts of games where you don't actually play them. They just tell you a fun little, it's a little interactive picture book segment, really, which are my favorite kinds of games. But we'll get into that at the end of the episode. But before we do that, why don't you take a second? We're spreading love on Valentine's Day, right? Why don't you spread the love here at the Plug and Play podcast? Give us a like. Give us a rating on your favorite podcast services. We're there. Apple iTunes, Spotify, Podcast Addict, apparently a very popular podcast platform. Please, by all means, give us a like, a review. Why don't you send an email in, to the Plug and Play podcast email. That's pluginplaypodcast1@gmail.com. If it's too much for you, it's in the description, along with timestamps. Labor of love we put in. We want you to be, accommodated in every way. Have a good listening experience. But you can send in an email, and you can be a part of the show. Have your email read out, and we can have a little conversation, kind of one-on-one in a way. However you want to view that, not really, but it is what it is. But now that we've done the housekeeping, ladies and gentlemen, let's get into the news, because I think this is going to be a long episode. And the longer these go, the more exhausted I get. So the energy's high now. Energy's high. But it's going to... Oh, I don't know how I'm going to feel at the end of this one. But let's get into it. Okay. We're going to start off with what I think was an interesting story. Didn't see a lot of people talking about this in terms of news coverage. But I think it's a pretty big deal. PSN was down for 20 hours. And, this was an interesting one. It didn't really affect me that much. So it was down for 20 hours Friday and Saturday of last week. So, the week before Valentine's Day. I was busy pretty much all Saturday. So, I didn't miss much, but it was, on Friday night, I opened up my console to sync some trophies, and nothing showed up. And I was like, well, why can't I sync these trophies? I just want to see, where my progress is in this game in terms of trophies, and it would never sync. And I was like, what the heck is going on? Of course, eventually I saw, some news articles that were like, well, PSN is just straight up down. And I was like, oh, well, that's no good. Came back up 20 hours later, so most of Saturday gone, obviously all of Friday evening, and then, Sony never really responded to it. This was what I thought was kind of the biggest problem here, was Sony never responded to this in any way. They never told everybody why this happened. I've heard a variety of theories, but in total, we have no explanation, no definitive knowledge on what could have happened to cause this. And it was never notified to people that it was down in the first place. You just had to know that it was down. I guess enough people collectively just put their heads together and said, yeah, I can't do anything online. This is a problem. Maybe it's down now. At the end of that 20 hours, Sony came out and gave an apology. They said sorry for that. They never told everybody why, which I guess they don't have to. But I think it's definitely something people deserve to know, to be quite frank. And then, in response to that, people got 5 extra days of PlayStation Plus, which, if you don't know, PlayStation Plus has a variety of benefits, but one of really the main driving factor for PlayStation Plus in general is it basically gives you access to online games. You cannot play a lot of online games without PlayStation Plus. So you're paying for that service. You didn't have access to that service for 20 hours. You deserve some recompense, right? 5 days, I think, is pretty ample, to be quite honest. I think a lot of people were disappointed that they didn't get more. I think when you didn't even have a day of downtime, I think, like 5 days is pretty good, just monetarily speaking. But, at the same time, let's be real, Friday and Saturday are like your go-to gaming days. I think everybody, if they're going to have free time to do some online gaming, it's going to be on a Friday evening or a Saturday evening. So, I mean, in a world where perhaps you have a wife and 2 kids and a dog, and, you have, no free time on a given evening to do anything, and maybe you had some free time set aside to do something that you really wanted to do, like play a video game and relax, you could not have done that on PlayStation Network. And I think that is where the real crux of why I think this is such a big deal is so many games require PSN to be up in order to play them. A lot of people were making complaints you can't play anything. Yeah, you can play stuff. You can play a lot of stuff, but there are a lot of restrictions to that. So you can't play anything on your secondary console. So if you have 2 accounts that are linked to a console, you could have only played with one of them. Hopefully you were around your primary console at the time, but if not, you were out of luck because your console was going to have to go beam up into the internet to basically get the license to make sure that you were legally allowed to play that game, that you had bought it, and then come back down and let you. So you couldn't do it if you're on a secondary console. And then what I find most egregious here is a lot of single-player games now require an internet connection. I mean, basically every Ubisoft game ever, not ever, but a lot of them require an internet connection just for you to play, even though the primary experience is single-player. A lot of games have kind of moved in that direction of just always online to collect data, or give you features that you may not even be interacting with, or something like that. And when those games are hit with a PSN outage, it means, guess what? You can't play them anymore. Obviously, you have your Fortnites and Call of Duties and stuff like that heavily impacted. That's where a lot of people, a lot of gaming hours for most people go into, and that was obviously not accessible at all during that time frame. So I hope you had a good Netflix show to binge or something like that, because you weren't going to be playing no games during that. But I think it's I think it is eye-opening to show how what's the word? Reliant, I guess, is a good one. Reliant on PSN. Most things are now. This is something that is well pointed out by PC gamers, not a thing on PC. PC is not, it is an open platform. So your internet connection is just your internet connection. You don't have to go through a PlayStation Network server to play these games, which I guess if you had to sign into PSN for those PC games that are on PSN, then that would not work, which another freaking flaw there, I guess. But I don't know. I know Sony's also taken some of those requirements away, like Helldivers 2, that was taken away. So I don't remember which titles exactly require you to sign in on PSN on PC. But you couldn't have played those games because they require a PSN account to sign in. But most PC games, I guess Sony is making me have to say most, not all, are good with, you just, if your internet is up, you can play them anywhere. The servers are not dictated by a specific company. They're just dictated by internet access pretty much, is a more simplified way of saying it. So you're not bound by these companies' servers or a single entity's servers. So, you can still play if something goes down. That's not the case here. I think it's, it's really unfortunate. This is also during a time where the new Monster Hunter game beta was during this weekend, Friday through Sunday, I think. So, like, the vast majority of people who wanted to get in on, and this is I think the beta was exclusive to PlayStation. So they had to move the beta. Technically it was accessible for one day, but that's not good for anybody. Obviously, for the players who wanted to access the beta, and for the company who's using the beta as a potential baseline for getting the game ready for launch, which is kind of what betas are for now. Sometimes they're just straight up demos, limited time demos, but a lot of times they're actually using it to be like, okay, well, are our servers prepared for a large influx of players? Is there any last minute tweaks we need to make before this game hits store shelves? And they couldn't do that, so they had to move it. So it really messed up a lot of people's plans and a lot of people's day, and I think that's really unfortunate. Probably longer than it needed to be talked about. It's because it was just such a blip, but at the same time, I think it really does point out some of the flaws in specifically PlayStation, and this is very reminiscent of the fact when the PlayStation, the infamous PlayStation outage years back, over a decade and a half ago, I think now, when PlayStation Network went down during the PlayStation 3 era. Obviously nowhere near as bad. It was down for weeks at that point. And online connectivity was not as big of an issue at that point either, or as integrated in a lot of games then either. But it shows that even a day is that's catastrophic. It is a massive hindrance, and you got to have a way for this stuff to come out, or to come back online, even when one single entity loses its ability to produce servers for things to work on. So I think it is something worth noting, and I think worth paying attention to in the future, that this is an issue, and it's going to continue to be an issue, and hopefully never again, but I guarantee you it will happen at some point, somewhere down the line. These servers are going to go down again, and everybody's going to get locked out of everything. So unfortunate for those affected. I was not personally, but or at least not heavily. But to those who are affected, I salute you. I hope you get your gaming hours in elsewhere. Next up on the docket, I'm going to hit the next small news item. At least no one's really talking about it. I personally take an interest in this because I love E3. And this is basically just the ongoing saga of E3. I can't imagine this being a continuing saga of E3 beyond this point. But the ESA has launched their next E3, kind of. It's called iicon, with two I's, double iicon, which is basically a new E3. It is a developer conference in Las Vegas, Nevada, which they'll start hosting next year, and it's basically just for big publishers to come and network, which was what E3 was supposed to be. Or not, okay, rewind that. Not that it was supposed to be that. E3 was initially started as a way for game publishers to show the games that they had to retailers. So it was like a chance for, say, EA to come out and say, hey, here's the new Madden game we've got going, cooking in the oven. Walmart, you wouldn't necessarily think this about E3 based on the reputation it has within the past several years. But Walmart executives would come and they would say, oh, this new Madden game looks pretty sick. I should reserve X number of store shelf space for this particular game when it releases at X time. So it was more of a showcase for retailers so that these publishers could reserve store shelf space for their games. And over time, it really just became like a marketing thing. I don't know if it became an unnecessary thing per se. Clearly, it's not now. And people seem to be doing fine without it. But at the time, that's what E3 was. And so the E3 that I know now, or that I became more accustomed to and attached to, were these huge blowout marketing presentations that were basically the company's like marketing cycles kind of all crammed into like 1 week. And it kind of evolved into that because it was always supposed to be them showing this stuff off to Walmart or GameStop or whoever was going to sell these games, but it also kind of just doubled as like this huge hype marketing event too. So obviously E3 is dead. ESA could not figure out how to make that work. I was fortunate enough to go to one of the last E3s ever, a longtime dream of mine, and I made it a reality. I think the third to last year that it was alive, and the first year that it was made public to anyone who just had enough money to buy a badge. But in this case, ESA has said they've already got a lot of people on board. And like when I read this list, I was like, oh, okay. Like this is pretty substantial. Like I didn't expect, when so many people pulled out of E3, I just expected no one to give a frick about this. And then it's like, well, no, Nintendo, Microsoft, Sony, Amazon Games, Disney, Electronic Arts, Epic Games, Square Enix, Take-Two Interactive, Ubisoft, and Warner Brothers have all confirmed attendance. There are obviously others that have, and others that will continue to confirm. So basically everybody I just listed off is like the biggest publishers in the video game industry. Like I honestly, off the top of my head, cannot think of any other huge players other than those guys. Like those are all the big fish in the pond or the sea or whatever you want to say. So like that, I was like, okay, this is clearly something that everybody's on board with. And it's like, okay, well, what exactly will they be doing? And according to the ESA, quote, this is an opportunity for attendees to gain exclusive access to visionary keynotes, engaging discussions and workshops, and elite networking opportunities with executive shaping the future of entertainment, business, and technology. So, it's GDC for like the ESA, which if you don't know what GDC is, it's the gaming development conference, which is essentially where literally just developers of video games go, and they just give presentations on like, here's how I made the fighting combat in Hi-Fi Rush, like here's how I developed it. And while that's cool, like I don't necessarily need to buy a ticket and fly, halfway across the country to go see that. This is clearly like a networking focused, like kind of deal where everybody's just going to be schmoozing, boozing, and talking about video games, which is fine. But it's not E3. I highly doubt we're going to be seeing some new conference or some new presentation of the newest, biggest video game at this particular event. So I'm not particularly enthused about it myself, but it's interesting that the ESA is even still doing anything. I think they kind of have an obligation to. That's where a lot of people from these organizations are paying a lot of money to the ESA to basically, if you didn't know, the ESA is a lobbying organization, which lobbies on behalf of video game companies for laws, obviously centered around video games. And, like the ESA was initially established, I believe, to create the ratings board. So if you ever look at a video game box, you'll see like E in the bottom corner or T or M. So that was essentially to keep regulators off of video game companies' backs, to say that they were, like telling people what the product was inside and if children could get a hold of it or not. It's long story. It's just you're paying a lot of money to the ESA to be a part of the ESA for them to do I don't even know what right now. I'm sure they're doing lobbying on Washington, D.C., and, like making sure that everything's going smooth for these companies, but you never hear about it. So like this is just another way that you kind of get your money's worth out of your dues to the ESA, I'm sure. But anyway, just thought I'd mention that. I just thought I again have a very big fondness for E3, and so any chance to really gush about it, I'm going to take. So next up, and I think the other big news item to me, kind of coupled together a couple of things here, but Multiversus will shut down and then delist at the end of this current season. It's the 5th season of this game, and on May 30th, the game will conclude. And when that happens, it will delist, meaning you will not be able to purchase it again, download it again. Well, you can download it as long as you've downloaded it before. So this is kind of like in conjunction, a PSA. If you ever wanted to try out Multiversus, go download it. And on top of that, install the game as well. Like open it, run the game, play it a little bit, whatever you want to say. But you need to have opened the game, created an account, whatever the case is. I've never played Multiversus, so I don't know exactly what the setup process is there. But you can't just download it. You have to download and open it and start the game in order for this to work in the future. But I went ahead and absolutely did that. This is a game. I mean, why not? It's free. This is a free-to-play game, so just go ahead and download it. But within that, there's a lot of things to unpack here. So what happens when a free-to-play game like this dies, per se? One, the fact they need to delist it is kind of seems unnecessary to me. Why? I honestly, why would you ever delist a free-to-play game like this? Just leave it up, it seems silly. This seems like a top-down executive level decision that did not give a frick. That just did not think this through, and a developer wouldn't have done this at all. Because you can still, even if you're not adding content to the game, you can still leave it available, and people, maybe it's 5 people, I don't know, but it's 5 people that could still possibly give you money through microtransactions and other stuff that have been, shoved into this game. There's also the entirety of the roster. I mean, I think it's entirely possible you could have just given this game a last-minute update to be here you go, here's the game, maybe even put out a for-profit version of the game so it's not free-to-play, and say, here, you pay us $40, and you just get all the characters, get all the skins, get all the content that ever came out for this game. We will not be supporting it anymore, but here's everything. Because, and I'll get to in a second, this game is a little wonky in how it was monetized, or I think it was not monetized in a way that it should have been, in all honesty. And it makes it really difficult for anybody to continue playing this even after the game shuts down. So when the game goes offline, as of right now, in fact, as of a few days ago, so obviously by the time this podcast comes out, this announcement has been made. So as of the moment they made this announcement, you can no longer buy any of the in-game currency. I believe it is called Gleamium. Don't know why, but it is called Gleamium. You use this currency to essentially unlock battle passes, and most importantly, I'm sure cosmetics, but most importantly, characters. So if you didn't know anything about Multiversus is, and I guess I should have led with this at the top, Multiversus is essentially Warner Brother Interactive's Smash Brothers. They took all of it's a character fighting platforming game where you take damage and you eventually knock people off a stage, and that's how you kill people. And it has characters from all over the place. Massive brands in here. They have obviously Bugs Bunny, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Finn from Adventure Time, Iron Giant from that movie that they somehow never really bring back up unless they like need good faith from people. What's another one? The Gremlin Gizmo from Gremlins. Beetlejuice was a newer character that they added. The Powerpuff Girls, Rick and Morty, Steven Universe, Vilma from Scooby-Doo. Like, these are all characters I'm just pulling off the top of my head, but they're all in the rosters, and there's a million more. And they were planning on adding more characters, obviously, as the game went on. But this game has a very rocky history. It specifically launched a long time ago, not a long time ago, but a couple of years back, and was successful. And then I think it had a trail off in users. I think users stopped playing it for whatever reason, but that happens with every online game. But like for some reason, they felt the need to pull the game back in for a development cycle. They thought that they needed to do a massive overhaul of the game, and essentially for like, I can't remember, 6 months to a year, something like that. It was a substantial amount of time. The game was taken off. You were not able to play it. If I remember correctly, you were not able to play it. And they worked on it for 6 months to a year and put the game back out and said, hey, here's this, here's the big update. This is the actual, what the game was supposed to be the whole time. Take a look. And nobody gave a frick. People seemed to have not cared or not, remembered this game or something. Clearly, this was a bad move. And I remember people at the time were praising it because most games don't have, honestly, the money, let's be real, to just completely deplatform your game for like 6 months. Like, that's something you don't see because it's just economically not viable. But like on top of that, most companies do not have like the forethought to be like, we are so committed to this game, give it another 6 months in the oven. Like, we've seen what people have been doing with it. We see what the problems may be, and we realize that there may be some problems here, and there's a better way to address these issues. So let's put it back in the oven for a while, make sure this thing is real ready to go. You don't see that. And people were like, oh, this is great. I think, look, forethought, like hindsight is 2020, right? I think we're all going to look back on this and say that was what killed this game. Like, this could have possibly been a game that didn't have this massive failure story if you didn't pull it back in and take it off store shelves for that long and keep it out of the public mind's eye for so long. That's the thing, though, is it's so difficult for anyone to really look at these games as a service games, and I think this is really what the problem is here. For the grand overarching issue for these live service games is, I think everybody is looking at these things and they're saying, oh, well, obviously that failed because that or this or maybe that. And I think you look at something like Concord, and I genuinely have no idea why that game failed as badly as it did. I think everybody's going to have their 2 cents. I think everybody's going to say, well, obviously it's generic. Nobody wants that. And it's like, okay, cool. And then Marvel Rivals comes out and it's the freaking same thing as something else. And like, it's just being eaten up by everyone. Or like, oh, well, the character designs weren't very good. It's like, okay, well, I can name a handful of other games that have, generic character designs too, but like they're freaking doing fine. Like, I guess I could play as the same generic soldier guy in Call of Duty for the 50 millionth time, but like I don't see anybody really complaining about that. So it's like, what does make a live service game good? What does make it bad? Like, this is a game that has no other competition outside of Smash Brothers, which came out years ago. I guess there's that Ubisoft game too that's also a Smash clone. But like, there's not that much competition in this space. Not only that, but this was, from what I have heard, considered a good game. Like, people thought this game was good. And I also thought the roster seemed really interesting. Like, I think there was a Game of Thrones. I think Arya Stark from Game of Thrones was in this game. I think Neo from The Matrix was a playable character in this game. Like, if you told me that there was a Smash Brothers competitor that was just like Smash and people liked as much as Smash, or not like as much as Smash, but was, a competent replacement to Smash, and it had all of those characters in it, I'd say, you're kidding me. I can't believe that Warner Brothers signed off on all those characters to be in there. Like, I would think that they have, like, there's more reverence for their IP than that. So, like, I would have been blown away. And I personally was never interested in it because, like, I am not that big of a multiplayer guy, and it seemed to clearly have a big multiplayer bent to it. So, like, I never gave the game a chance. I was only ever going to play it if, like, friends wanted to play it, and none of my friends wanted to play it, so it never manifested. But I think it's another one. I think this is going to be another one that people point to and say Warner Brothers effed up. This is another live games as a service game that is completely, the fault of, like the live service industry. Like, people just don't know how to make games for this. And I just can't really point to anything that Multiversus did, minus one thing, that really made it a problem. And that one thing is the only bad thing I've heard about this game. The only bad thing is its monetization practice. Like, the only way to unlock characters was to buy them with the premium currency. So obviously that's the shiny toy they're dangling in front of you. I agree. Like, that would, if I was a greedy executive rubbing my fingers together and saying, how do I get more money? I'd say, charge those guys for Beetlejuice. Put $10 on Beetlejuice and make them freaking pay $10 for him or something like that. That's clearly the high prize thing, but that's like, in a fighting game, I think that's a little messed up. I don't think you can do that in a fighting game. I mean, that's like, like Street Fighter being like, no, you have to pay $15 before you use Ryu. It's like, okay, well, then how does that make the competitive scene for this game fair if I don't have access to the full roster, or at least a significant portion of the roster? Not only that, but I believe that these characters were only unlockable during specific seasons. So if you didn't unlock these characters during the season, which is typically a 3-month period, then you just didn't get them. And so they locked the characters out of the roster for previous season or previous players or new players. Or probably a better way of saying it. For new players, it completely locks you out of these characters. And what if that's the character you wanted to play as? Or, what if that character is just unbalanced and is, the best character to play as in the game? Then it really puts you at a disadvantage. It puts you in a really frustrating position where, like, well, why play this game anymore if I can't play as Gizmo from the Gremlins movies? Something along those lines. I thought that was a little ridiculous. I think it's pretty clear. Like, there are definitely people that put characters behind a paywall. Like, I literally just use Street Fighter as an example, but they have season passes, or DLC bundles, I guess is a better way of saying it, where you buy 3 new characters or something like that for X number of dollars. So, but for the most part, that's like not a recurring thing. That's like, we're going to do this like 2 or 3 times after the game is launched for like 6 months, and then we're good. Like, this was like an ongoing service game that like was always going to be adding characters for the foreseeable future and was always going to be locking people out of them, which I think is a little weird. And I think it's pretty obvious that, like, with these IP, you really probably could have gotten away with just doing skins. And I don't know why that wasn't the monetization scheme. I'm sure you can buy skins in this game. I don't know. I've never played it. But I think it's clear that like a lot of games, like Fortnite is clearly the prime example here. You have a base character and then you just buy a ridiculously overpriced skin. And it's like, okay, well, that seems to be the better way of monetizing people. Nobody gets frustrated by that. It's clearly there's an audience for it. There's a market for it. And, you know, I think you could have clearly done that. Give Beetlejuice a new skin and then make people pay $5 for that. You know, give Anya Stark a new skin and make people pay $5 for that. It's like, okay, that would probably still net you, if you had a good player base, a whole ton of money. And people, I think, would be compelled by that if you gave them good skins like you'd see on a Fortnite or something like that. So I think, if anything, this game's monetization scheme was what really killed it. I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you exactly why, but that is probably why, if I had to guess. Like I said, this is another live service game in the dumps. This is another mystery to me, in all honesty. I haven't heard many people say why they don't like Multiversus, and I haven't heard many people say, you know, like why they think that there was a problem with Multiversus. So it's hard for me to gauge this, having never played it myself, and I probably would have had to play, you know, a few dozen hours of it to even really fully understand that answer anyway. But like I said, from the outside looking in, this looked fine. But I mean, we've recently, and I think I even talked about this on the podcast, Warner Brothers Interactive is under a lot of stress at the moment. The head of that branch recently stepped down, and he cited massive failures financially recently because of specifically Suicide Squad, but he said the vast majority of those problems financially for the quarter were due to Multiversus. Like, and that's why they're shutting this puppy down. You know, like, it's clear. Like, this, according to Warner Brothers, this is a cash cow that's not returned. This is a money pit that's not returning any investment, and losing them a whole lot of cash. And it's literally hurting the entire branch of the company and bringing all the financials down, which is, you know, I think they're going to start, you're going to see a lot of things in Warner Brothers start to change because they are really in hurt for some financial norms over there. Speaking of which, they have confirmed Rocksteady. So obviously Rocksteady is a part of the Warner Brothers branch. They, like I just said, made Suicide Squad, which was a massive underperformer last year, is working on a new single-player Batman Arkham game. It's kind of silly to see that they ever made them work on anything other than that. It was clearly a greed play to move probably their most prestigious studio onto something completely different. And here's the problem with this, is we just talked about this on the previous episode with Dragon Age, is I see a lot of parallels with Rocksteady and and BioWare. Obviously, BioWare was a very prolific and well-respected single-player studio for making games like Dragon Age and Mass Effect, and their corporate overlords that owned them said, in this case EA, said, hey, maybe you should make a live service game. And so didn't say maybe. They said, you're going to make a live service game. And they said, hey, we're going to make Anthem. And Anthem came out, and it bombed, and nobody liked it. And in the process of making Anthem, they basically scared away all their talent. Anthem took so long and was so vastly different than what everybody at the studio had signed up to do normally, which was a single-player focused game, like a Mass Effect or Dragon Age, that by the time they eventually got back around to making those games that people liked, there was nobody there. Nobody was left at those studios or that studio to make the games that people were kind of expecting from them. And therefore, you got Dragon Age: The Inquisition, which was clearly a mess in terms of its critical reception and its sales as well. So, like I said, I don't think the game's bad, but I think it is certainly disappointing. It's not a BioWare game, and I think you're seeing a lot of parallels here, too, with Rocksteady. Rocksteady, obviously known for the Batman Arkham games. They were told to make a live service game, made Suicide Squad, crashed and burned critically and commercially, and now they're being told, okay, fine, like, we messed up. Maybe you should go back and make one of those single-player games again, which I'm sure won't be back. They just started working on this. So, like, this isn't going to manifest until, maybe 3-4 years at the earliest. And I can't imagine it being that early. I think it's going to be 4 or 5. So, like, I think a lot of people probably left. I think a lot of their studio talent probably left. I think you're looking at Ship of Theseus again here with Rocksteady, and I think that they have more of their talent here than they did with Inquisition, especially if this game doesn't go through a horrific development cycle like Inquisition did, or not Inquisition, excuse me, Veilguard. If I've been saying Inquisition, I meant Veilguard the whole time, but for Dragon Age. But this is, I think they have a little bit more of their talent left than BioWare did for Veilguard, but I think it's still a lot of people probably left. And they depending on how this cycle goes, if this game is really tough to develop for, I'm thinking you might see more people leave. And if that happens, I think Rocksteady's dead. I think your Batman Arkham series is dead. You're never going to have it again. Like, the magic's gone. And I think it's another horrific misplay by Warner Brothers Interactive and or Warner Brothers Games, and it's honestly really sad to see both of these projects in the way they are. Warner Brothers has always been a really money-grubbing studio or publisher, and it's always made decisions that people, I think, honestly, are way too forgiving about. I see way smaller studios or publishers get way more flack for things that are not anywhere near as bad as stuff that Warner Brothers does. Warner Brothers does a lot of really like hand-rubbing stuff that like is hand-wringing stuff that is I genuinely don't know how people don't absolutely despise this publisher, but it is what it is. Like, they have clearly made some bad moves in approaching the live service games elements of like the industry, and I think it's at least a PSA. Go check out Multiversus if you have any interest. Download that sucker, start it up. Apparently, when you do that, it will like put a save file on your system, and then you'll be able to replay it after, or pick it back up where you left off after the game comes back, or after the game comes back, after it delists. So you can still do that. So I downloaded it on Steam and PlayStation because those are my two primary consoles, or anywhere I could possibly see it being played on in the future. So I'll have to start those up. I haven't started them up yet, but I've purchased them and I intend to start them up before May 30th. So if it looks good, if you have any intent of even trying it, just go ahead and do that. You will not be able to buy any premium currency. I don't think I mentioned that. Yeah, you cannot buy anything with any more currency. The currency that you have after the delisting will not be able to be used. And they're not bringing back any other characters to buy. So it's a really bad situation pretty much for everybody. Like, it's just it's such a mind-boggling way of dealing with this, to be quite frank. But yeah, I think I stuck on that for a really long time. But the point is that it sucks. But let's move on to some more happy news, okay? This is a little bit nicer. I mean, everybody loves rage baiting is great, okay? We all love talking about negative things because it gets your brain, we all love that. Let's click on things that make us mad. Like, we all love that, okay? Let's talk about some happy things here. And this is a little bit divisive for me to say that, but I think this is really good, and that is the state of play. So Sony's February State of Play. So as you can tell, I'm riding high on it. I really enjoyed it. It was jam-packed. As I said at the start of the episode, 35 games were discussed on this 45-ish minute presentation. Some new first-party IP, some new second-party IP, or not maybe some new, but like some more showings of some second-party IP, and a lot of third-party IP that looked really good. So, like, I mean, that's kind of surprising. For those of you that don't know, Sony has two types of presentations. They have State of Plays, and they have Sony... Oh, frick. I forget the name. It's essentially another name. It's another name. It's like conference or something like that. It slips my mind. Sorry. I'm a one-man team here. Forgive me. But State of Plays are normally much smaller. They have announcements that are typically, like, in all honesty, they are contractual obligations a lot of times. So it's very obvious a lot of times that, like, these are games that Sony's already talked about, and they've already gotten a big marketing push, and it's like, okay, why are we seeing these again? And that's because a lot of the times, you know, like, these companies are like, okay, well, we'll be a second-party exclusive IP, but we need a trailer to be shown like every 4 months at a, Sony State of Play at one of your things, because that gets a lot of eyeballs and it gets a lot of excitement. So, like, you have to show that. And so they do. There have been times where, like, Sony State of Plays will be specifically focused, and we'll get to that in a second, on specific games. And some of those games are like, I don't even give a frick about this. Like, who cares? But it's like, well, Sony clearly contractually was obligated to push out a trailer on one of their directs, or I think that's what it is, a Sony Direct? No, that's a frickin' Microsoft thing. I'm sorry, I'm just going to stop. I'm not going to talk about that anymore. But, it seems, forced, and it's because it's literally contractually obligated. Like, Sony had to do it in a certain time frame. So to just come out of nowhere and then just be like, yeah, that's it. That's all we really had to show because we had to. But anyway, this felt a lot more interesting, a lot more well-rounded, a lot better paced, and a lot of games here that I am personally interested in. I think that looked good. And like, I went into this expecting garbage. Like, I was like, I don't think this will be a good showing. In fact, Jeff Grubb, who's an analyst I follow, was like, this is not going to be a good show. But that's like, he even came out afterwards and was like, okay, yeah, it seemed like people were happy about it. But like, that's because last time I said there was going to be a really good showing at a State of Play, people got, mad at me because, like, they thought it sucked. And so, like, and admittedly, like, he was definitely wrong when he said that. Like, it was not a good showing. But, like, I thought it was good, or something like that. And it's like, okay, well, who knows what to expect from these things. But they're typically not very good. But this one was solid. This one was solid. So there was a lot, like I said, a lot to go through here. I'm only going to talk about things if I think it's particularly interesting because, like I said, a lot of stuff to go into. So let's start off with the beginning, shall we? Which is Monster Hunter Wilds. We'll be going through this chronologically. So Monster Hunter Wilds got another showing of gameplay, tidbits of story, for those who I think care about that in Monster Hunter. And a release date, well, we knew that already because the beta already has been out. But essentially, it was just another showing of Monster Hunter Wilds out on February 28th. I am not particularly interested in Monster Hunter. I played Monster Hunter Worlds, and I did not really enjoy myself. I've talked about it on the podcast before with Alexis and Cam. Probably played the game wrong, but at the same time, when I was told how to play the game correctly, I was like, this game seems like a horrific grind fest. I don't particularly find the need to do this. And I was actually talking with a guy about Monster Hunter a couple days ago, and he was like, well, yeah, what I really like about it is like the combos and stuff like that. And I was just like, okay, so you have to really be invested in your build and like how to play as it and stuff. And I was like, I just never really did that. So I don't know. For some reason, Monster Hunter is just not gelled with me. I have heard you really have to let it get its hooks in you for it to actually like be this thing that you really love. And I've just never allowed it to do that. And I can't say I'm like upset about that either, because it's like these games would be hundreds of hours and probably consume my life for, like a month and a half or 2 months. And I just can't afford that. So I don't care about letting it. So I will be skipping this one pretty easily. But I know a lot of people are obviously very excited about it. I think this game's going to review very well. I mean, like, this is probably the number one fantasy critic pickup for the year. Like, this is number one draft pick, like, pretty easily. So it's going to review well. People are going to love it, but I am going to skip it. Next is Shinobi Art of Vengeance. It is a side-scrolling beat-em-up Shinobi game. It looked pretty cool. The art style is interesting. For some reason, Capcom really pushing Shinobi. We'll get that. We'll get to that in a minute. There's more Shinobi announcements in this very press conference. Oh, this is Sega. Oh, excuse me. I'm getting Shinobi and oh dang, what's that other one? Give me a second. I will tell you. Onimusha. I'm getting Shinobi and Onimusha mixed up, which I will talk about in a minute because I don't know anything about either one of these IP, but they are classic IP being brought back from the dead. It looked interesting. This is going to release on the 29th of August. So, again, hack and slash, looked cool. I don't think I'm going to get around to play with it. This is, fine. It looks fine. Honestly looks good. But, like, it's just not a genre that I feel the need to pay money for and devote my time to. I'd probably play, like, an hour or two of this game and then get kind of bored with it. That's what typically happens with like side-scrolling like hack and slash games with me, which is also why I think like the really short hack and slash games are normally really good. But anyway, this is one. I guess if you're a really big Shinobi fan, you've been looking forward to it. Welcome back. It's been brought back, and you should be happy. Not much to say on that. Sonic Racing Cross Worlds. This is out on February 21st. Or excuse me, no it's not. You can sign up for the closed network test on February 21st. Sorry, my notes are a little off there. Or I jumped the gun, I guess. This is a sequel to Sonic Racing. I can't remember the subtitle for it. But essentially, a kart racing game with Sonic and friends. The network closed network test has already confirmed like basically every Sonic character you've ever heard of is going to be in here, or at least all of Sonic's buddies, all of his friends. That's typically how they refer to them in these games. And a handful of tracks and stuff. This will be a Sega basically. It will be a Sonic, not a Sonic game. It'll be a Sega game. So the previous game you could play as like the dancing monkey from that. Oh, I can't remember that name. It's like a Mexican like Latin themed rhythm game. like it's they still make games for it. But I think you could play as Kiryu from Yakuza. Like I wish they would do other like Valkyria Chronicles characters. That's one of my favorite franchises ever. So like that would be cool. I don't think they ever went that deep cut, but like who knows? It's the sequel, so that could happen. But like it's kind of basically like I struggle to say the Smash Brothers of Sonic, or excuse me, of Sega. But like it kind of tries to dip its toes into that. I played the original. I actually have a friend who's really into him. And it's a fun kart racer. Like it's really hard. Like I love a good arcadey kart racer. And like that's what Sonic Racing is. I think if you like something like Mario Kart, you will love Sonic Racing. And I think this is another example of that. I think it looks good. I think it's hard for me to commit to buying like a $60, $70 kart racer. Like I do that with Mario Kart, but that's because like I have friends that want to play. I think Sonic Racing is a little bit harder of a sell than Mario Racing. I think most people, like kind of appreciate and like Mario. I think Sonic is kind of a little bit more niche, at least in terms of my demographic and age group. So it's harder to get that kind of investment from your friends to play Sonic Racing. But like I think this game is going to shape up to be a fun kart racer. I don't know how it's going to review. It'll probably be low 80s, like an 83 or something like that if I had to guess. But still, I think it will be fun. I think if you like these kind of games, you're in for a treat. Next, kind of surprised me. Not that this game exists, but that the reception to it was so strong. I feel like people came out of the woodwork for this, and I was like, I didn't know you people existed. That's Digimon Story Time Stranger. This is another Digimon RPG. So Digimon, obviously, the Pokemon equivalent, the main Pokemon competitor in the 90s. This is honestly, I always liked Digimon a little bit more than I liked Pokemon as a kid. Pokemon was, a little bit more lighthearted, a little bit more episodic in terms of it was just like, I think it was an easy, wider audience appeal. Digimon was like, it's a little bit darker. It was a little bit more serious. It had a more continuing narrative that I really dug as a kid. Because, I mean, like, when all you're watching is, like, SpongeBob and stuff, you're like, dang, where's, like, the character progression? Like, why isn't Patrick, like, why isn't he, like, getting better? Why isn't he growing, as a character? Why isn't he doing that? And, Digimon had that, which I really latched onto and probably helped catapult my weebiness into into a much higher stratosphere as a child. I couldn't watch a lot of it because I didn't have cable as a kid, and it was originally on Fox Kids, which like was very quickly moved to a cable network once it started. So like I could never watch it anymore. But WB Kids, which had Pokemon, I could still get a hold of. So I continued watching Pokemon, but like Digimon was like, these kids would like beat each other up. Like I vividly remember like the characters like punching each other in the face as a child. And like, a lot of times they would like join the dark side or kind of go back and forth on that. And, like towards the end of the season, they like go back to the real world and they have to like deal with their parents who have a divorce. It's like, okay, we're touching on some stuff here. Like there's some themes, there's some stuff happening in Digimon. I know that the third season of Digimon is like a notoriously dark series or season of the show that touches on some pretty much, or the themes in general are typically pretty dark, much darker than you'd see in Pokemon, which, like never had any progression. Because, like here we are, what was it, last year or 2 years ago, like Ash finally became a Pokemon master. It's like, dude, that took him like 3 decades or something, close to, I think, 25 years. But like, he's still 11 in the show or something. So, good for him. Quite the accomplishment of an 11-year-old. The series kind of messed up. I send out a 10-year-old with a freaking animal into the wild. He almost like dies in episode 1. Like, what the frick? Anyway, big aside there. Back to the games, the Digimon games. Digimon has made several games over the course of its lifetime. I did not know there was such an audience for this. I follow Wario64 on his Twitter account, and like all the announcements, he does like kind of a play-by-play of each thing that's talked about, and this was by far the thing, at least at the onset, that had the most engagement. And that blew me away. I was like, is this like, whoa, did I miss something? Did I miss something here? I feel like this is clearly not something that I normally see have a lot of excitement around. Is the Digimon games series, but I believe the previous game in the series was Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth, is I believe the name of that. And I think it had a niche audience that was pretty excited about it. It is another JRPG game. I was never interested in it because I didn't hear the story was very good. I heard the combat was like very generic, turn-based JRPG, and I had no interest in diving into that. Digimon seems like a franchise that's probably okay to go back to after so long. Like, I don't feel like I've missed anything because freaking Agumon and Gabumon are like still front and center in like all of the promotional material for this. So they didn't ever like add very much new to the universe, which, probably makes it easier for people like me to come back and jump into. But like, I don't know where the excitement is for this, but I'm glad. I hope it's good, but like, I can't imagine this being significantly like a great game. I know that there's definitely some people out there who like them. I know the last game they made was actually received pretty well, at least in terms of its story, which was like kind of like a visual novel / turn-based like tactics game, but it really was just a visual novel because like the tactics gameplay was not good at all. So like I played a little bit of that game and like I wasn't feeling it. I just didn't want to play a visual novel at the time when I had so much other stuff to play. So like I jumped on it, or I jumped out of it. But like I know that there's a group of people out there that really do think that these games have potential, and the IP does too. So like, good for them. I didn't expect this game to get so much attention when it was announced, but I mean, hey, all power to you. Next is Lost Soul Aside. This one, I'm not gonna lie, I kind of forgot existed. And it kind of just came and snuck up on me in a way that I didn't expect it to, which, in other words, I think this game looked really freaking good. Or I'm hoping it looks really freaking good. So this is clearly the gameplay of a man who saw Final Fantasy 15 and said, oh yeah, I want to do that. I want to actually do that too. And for those of you who haven't played Final Fantasy 15, I have. I thought that combat sucks. I think Final Fantasy 15 visually is one of the coolest combat systems I've ever played. It really is like a fun to watch combat system, but you were playing it on rails. Like, that's why I hated that game, was the combat was just not engaging at all. Well, there's a lot of problems with 15, but like the combat was just not engaging at all. And like by the end of the game, I was so glad to be done with it. But in this case, Lost Soul Aside looks like it's actually trying to be something that's a big deal. And I think that it's interesting in a few ways, specifically its heritage is. And its heritage is Chinese. Now, what makes that interesting, for the first part, is Chinese development studios are clearly coming up worldwide. Black Myth Wukong was one of the best-selling games of last year, had a lot of praise around it, even though the reviews didn't reflect that. And I've heard it's mid from like several people. But, like Black Myth Wukong did really, really well. And this is another Chinese studio game. They're clearly, like they have ideas there and they have development studios there that are producing like products that people care about. Next is, and I think the much more interesting thing, or at least from a historical perspective, kind of, is this is a China Heroes developed game. And by that, China Heroes is Sony's incubation for China, for Chinese development. So they've done this with a few countries. India is the other one that I can think of off the top of my head. But they essentially go into those countries. They find development teams that need help kind of getting things started, since these are newer kind of developing studio or like areas for game development. And they essentially say, well, we'll help you make this game in however we can. We'll obviously get a piece of the pie, and then, you'll publish it, and it'll be on, maybe our console. And that's what happened with Lost Soul Aside. Not only that, but like clearly this game has a lot of people's eyes on it because Tencent came in and gave the studio a lot of money too. So like a lot of people think this game has some dough in the future. Like it's going to make a decent return. It's been in development for a while now, like a good while now. Like I think 2017 was like when it was first shown off. I think it's looking really good. Like I think it looks really good. I think I'm gonna keep an eye on it. I think I'm not totally sold yet. Like I wasn't totally sold on Black Myth Wukong, and I think this combat looks really good. And like there's clearly a lot of people who think it's going to do very well. So like I'm interested to get my hands on it. I'm interested to see if the story's any good. It's clearly very Asian inspired with a lot of its themes, and I'm all in for that. I love that aesthetic. So we shall see. Lost Soul aside. Next is Like a Dragon Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. They just said there's going to be a demo for it, which is cool. I think this game looks a lot more fun than the Like a Dragon prior games. I'm not super into turn-based combat, so this is a beat-em-up game from the Yakuza team. It's going to be a smaller game, I think. Don't quote me on this. I think it's a $40 game. And the demo will be out on February 13th, so if you're listening to this, it's already out. Go check it out. But something to note about this is not a demo that carries over your save file. So normally, Sega has been really good, and I've been praising them a lot for this recently, of giving players a save file at the end of the demo to then carry over to their actual playthrough of the game when they pick it up, or if they pick it up. And these games are normally pretty long. They're normally like 40, 60 hours, so giving them a meaty demo that's normally like 3 hours or so long, which is what they normally have been doing, it's a really nice quality of life thing to be like, okay, well, I don't have to play that 3-hour intro again. I can just go right into the game from where I left off. And I think the fact that this is not a demo that carries over in progress shows that this is going to be a very short game. Normally these Like a Dragon games or Yakuza games are like 40 to 60 hours, but they just released a kind of one of these like intermittent games that was Like a Dragon, The Man Who Erased His Name recently, and it was like a 10-hour game. So I think this is going to be in line with that. Like you're going to get a shorter, more compact experience, which I'm all for. But I think it's going to be a shock to Yakuza players' systems because most Yakuza fans have not. Like this is the first like one of those smaller games that I think people have really started paying attention to ever since this series really blew up in the West. And I think people are going to be a little surprised when it's like, oh, this is only 10 hours. Like, oh, that's not what I was expecting. But like, I don't know. People are really into this series now, and I'm interested to see how they're interested in it in like 5 years when like they are like, oh, like these games are all really similar and really long and bloated, and that's kind of how I've come to view the series as a whole, unfortunately. So I'm not looking forward to it, but if any of these games were going to get me in on it, it would be Pirate in Hawaii. It actually looks pretty good, at least for what I would be looking for. Next, in conjunction with that, Dave the Diver getting some Ichiban Holiday DLC. So the protagonist from the Like a Dragon series, or the Yakuza Like a Dragon series, will have his own DLC in here. Just another reminder that this is not an indie game. Everybody who says it's an indie game, you are mistaken. I had a whole podcast about that. Not a whole podcast, but I had a whole half of my discussion in Dave the Diver when I was talking about it on the podcast was how this game is not indie. It is backed by a huge company that can produce very high-quality DLC, clearly very frequently. Dave the Diver continues to get DLC, and honestly, I played several of the DLCs. When I played it, they are all really good and really impressive. So, like, this is no doubt going to be another one of those. I highly encourage you, if you play Dave the Diver, or enjoy Dave the Diver, go back and give this a shot. I think it's free. So there's no reason to not if you like Dave the Diver. I think the Godzilla DLC is like kind of crazy in that game, and the Dredge DLC is really cool too. So like I can just imagine this is going to be really well done as well. Yeah, I think it's not the last we see of Dave the Diver, clearly. Next is Splitgate 2, the alpha specifically, which begins on the 27th of February. So about 9 days at the time of this is going up. So not too long to wait. But it's I really liked the first Splitgate. Splitgate 1 was really, really fun. I had a lot of cool, like, I only played it for 2 days or something like that. But in those 2 days, like, I had a lot of cool moments. It was like, oh, frick. Like, I remember I was running away from this guy. He was, like, shooting me in the back, and I popped a portal on a wall, kept running, popped a portal on another wall, ran into that portal, and came out behind him and shot him in the back and killed him. And that game is just like filled with moments like that, and it's like it's really fun. It's just fun. It's just fun to experiment with that and see, like, start thinking with portals, but like in a more Twitch setting. You know, obviously we're used to thinking with portals in like portal puzzle game. But like that's you sitting around thinking about it, looking at all your options, and like, you know, like then placing a portal and jumping into it and seeing if that takes you where do you need to go. Like in this case, it's like you need to think pretty fast with your portals because somebody's trying to shoot you with a gun. And like I really enjoyed it. Here's the thing. It's a live service game, so free to play. It has nothing to do with Splitgate 1. So Splitgate 1's a completely separate download. And I think it's interesting because we have, I felt like, at least, seen in the past that adding a 2 to your live service game is a bad idea. It just does not help you. The obvious examples of that are Destiny 2 and Overwatch 2. Those games are, like, clearly took a hit when they moved from one iteration to the next. I mean, the obvious advantage with always just sticking with one application and updating it forever is you never lose that player base. Like, that player base will always have your game. They don't have to go and download a separate thing. They just go back to the same thing that they already knew. Their progress carries over, so like their account stays with that game, at least for the most part. And like it's less confusing. Like, why is this a 2? You know, like what changed? I think was like the big thing for Overwatch 2 that confused a lot of players. They seem to feel like it was a good idea to shut down Splitgate 1 and bring it back as a sequel that is also a free-to-play game. I don't know if that was a good idea. I feel like I remember people saying Splitgate was kind of losing some steam towards the end of its time on the market, and I'm interested to see what these guys have done with this to really make it shine and stand out and be something worthy of a 2. So I don't know if I'll get around to playing it. It depends if a friend wants to or not. But like, because I'm not a huge multiplayer shooter guy in general. But like, I really love the concept. I really think it can be fun. I'm rooting for it. I'll say that. I'm rooting for it. I think it's an interesting decision what they've done, putting it out again. Next was WWE W2K25. Man, I hate that naming convention. The Island DLC. I don't know anything about these games. I don't care about them. And moving on. Next is Borderlands 4. That's actually a big thing. So we had the 2 Randys come out, specifically Randy Pitchford, who's the head of Gearbox Studios, who makes all of the Borderlands games. And they talked about how they're going to have an entire showcase dedicated around Borderlands 4. So, you know, like, here's the launch date. But we're going to be coming back with like another hour of information about this game, which in all honesty, you probably need, from at least from my perspective. The release date is September 23rd of this year. So just to throw that out there, that's literally was the point of this trailer, and to show that we have a whole nother freaking thing coming for this. The reason I say that is because I have played all of the Borderlands games. I've beaten 1 through 3. I played the pre-sequel, the one on the moon, and like I got like a third of the way through it, and I was like, yeah, I'm good. I don't need any more of this. I've experienced Borderlands several times before, and this is just more of that. In this case, I don't see anything here in Borderlands 4 that looks different from 1 through 3. And I can't say that I'm like super enthralled by 1 through 3 anyway. Like I have put hundreds of hours into Borderlands over the course of its entire franchise. But like at the end of every single one of them, I always feel like, oh man, like where did my time go? Like I'm addicted to them for the time being, but like at the end of it all, I'm like, dang, I feel like I just wasted 70 hours. And I actually talked to a friend about that, about like, man, dude, is that what playing an MMO plays like? I was like, I play through it and I always feel compelled to keep going, and like I always feel kind of empty and hollow. And like at the end of it, like I have 100 hours in a game, and like I feel like I've accomplished absolutely nothing. And he's like, yeah, that's exactly what MMO players feel all the time. And I'm just like, oh, okay, cool. I'm glad I never got into MMOs. But I think Borderlands is like a huge franchise, sells millions and millions and millions of units, because it has a huge grip on the casual audience. Like even goes to show, like the movie came out last year, completely bombed, and even though the movie bombed, the sales of the games went up. So like it is for some reason just an IP that will not fail. People will buy it no matter what. I think a lot of people were disappointed with 3, but that doesn't stop it from selling a lot of units. It's weirdly been a long time since Borderlands 3 came out, and now we're getting 4. Like I said, I don't see anything new here. It is, I'm sure, a game that will be fun to play with friends, but like every game is. So I need to see this showcase they're talking about, and even then, I can't say I'm particularly interested or excited about it. But like this is undoubtedly going to be a big thing that's going to happen this year. It's going to sell a lot of units, and I'm sure Take-Two will be happy. Speaking of playing a game with friends, next up was Split Fiction. Split Fiction. So it's from the same studio that made It Takes Two and A Way Out. So these are 2 games, or I guess now a third, that is only playable with a co-op partner. I loved It Takes Two. It was fantastic. It is a game, and Split Fiction looks to be taking a lot of notes from it, where you are just, they shove so many cool and fun ideas into this gameplay that you're just like, this could have just been a full game. Like, why wasn't this just a full game? There's this one mechanic, and constantly hitting you with something new. I genuinely think that game was likely like my game of the year that year. It was so good, to a point where the fact that Split Fiction is just more of that, bro, sign me up. I am in 110%. I cannot wait to play it. I will be playing this game. You don't need to tell me more. And it's not the first we've seen of this game, and not the last. So out March 6th. Very, very excited about it. Moving on. Next is Directive 8020. Directive 8020 is the newest game from the studio behind Until Dawn, The Quarry, and of course, the Dark Pictures anthology games, which I have weirdly talked about several of them on this podcast. Just so happens they happen to be a bunch of free games on PlayStation Extra recently, and I just kind of started playing them. And because I'm a huge sucker, as we'll get to in the impressions, for narrative-focused games or choice-based games. I love that stuff. Here's the thing. All of the Dark Pictures anthology games, and yes, I have played all of them, are mid. They are just okay. The Quarry is fun, but like also mixed in its reception. Until Dawn is really the only thing the studio has ever made that is successful, like fully. Like everybody respects that. And I don't know why, but people seem to be excited for this. And I'm like, look, that's awesome that you're excited for this game, but I can't imagine this game is going to be knocking your socks off in any way that The Quarry or any of the Dark Pictures anthology games did. And it's hard for me to trust this studio when Until Dawn is the last good thing that they put out, or like that people think is really good, and it's freaking Until Dawn. It's like it's been a long time. So in this trailer, they showed off the monsters like a shape-shifting kind of. Like it takes the identity of the crewmates and looks like them and tries to kill them off in that way. I'm sure you will still be able to make many decisions in the game that will either lead to you saving all of the crewmates or allowing all of them to die. I really love the concept behind these games. I think they're very fun in terms of their concept. The execution is always a problem. That's where this is always an issue. So like, I'm glad people are looking forward to this game. I would be way more happy or way more positive on it if it did not have a Dark Pictures anthology game strapped to its title. That is a lot of baggage. Like their other two games that I consider to be way better are not a part of the Dark Pictures anthology. So like, I need to know more about this game, specifically if it's like a tight, like 10-hour experience or if it's like a 20-hour experience, like Until Dawn and The Quarry. Well, I don't even think those games were 20 hours, but like I know for a fact the Dark Pictures games were under 10. So, like it's, if it's tiny, I don't know. If it's bigger, I don't know. Like I don't really know about this studio either way. It's honestly surprising to me that this studio continues to make these games and doesn't try to make something else. Like I don't know how they have managed to just stick with this formula for so long when I don't think it's doing that well and isn't reviewing that well, and I don't hear these games selling gangbusters either. So like I don't know. I'm concerned about this. To be frank, I'm concerned about this. I will likely play it because I'm a sucker for these kinds of games. But like I think objectively speaking, this game is going to be iffy, probably. October 2nd, so just in time for you to get it for Halloween. Next is Five Nights at Freddy's Secret of the Mimic. Another Five Nights at Freddy's game, which they continue to make for June 13th. I don't care about this game. I don't care about Five Nights at Freddy's. I'm surprised. I mean, I know why. I'm not surprised. This children love Five Nights at Freddy's. I mean, like if you are 6 years old, this is like your dream. Like you love this thing. You have made this probably a part of your identity at this point. I mean, people keep buying them. So I mean, thank goodness they continue to make Five Nights at Freddy's games. I don't know anything about it. I'm moving on. The Midnight Walk, I do know something about. So this one is from the same studio that gave us Lost in Random, which you may not have heard of because I don't even know if it sold that well. It was an EA partner published title, which also had a similar art style to this. So a kind of Tim Burton-esque look to it, a stop-motion claymation art style, which I think it looks really cool and looks really interesting. And I'm at least interested in that perspective. Here's the problem, is that Lost in Random was super okay. It was not that fun. I picked up Lost in Random on a deep sale because I just thought the game looked cool. In terms of its concept, it's actually about a world in which everything is determined by chance, including your class. So like when you're born, they roll a die, and if you're a poor person, you roll low, and if you're a rich person, you roll high. So like everything in Lost in Random is determined by chance. And I thought that was an interesting idea. It just turns out the rest of the game is not as interesting, unfortunately. Midnight Walk is made by the same people. Everything that they've made previously, I can't think of the previous games, but I know I've looked into it, was also like pretty mid. So like I look at Midnight Walk and I see this is a game with an excellent art style and a great presence, but like I can't imagine this game being great. Like it has to be good at best. And you know, I think I'm just like keeping an eye on this, and I heavily expect this game to be okay. It looks like a walking around game. It has a PlayStation VR 2 capability, which is interesting at all in the first place. I can't say the gameplay that they've shown has looked particularly fun. It is literally just the art style that looks interesting here. So Lost in Random basically turned up to 11 in terms of its art style, but I can't imagine the game actually being fun. So like, cool, but that's it. Next, Darwin's Paradox. I believe this is a Konami game, if I remember seeing that logo correctly. It kind of was a quick in and out trailer, just kind of a little tiny platforming game, but with some budget behind it, which I'm about. It actually, this is right up my alley. I mean, I love platformers, so like it looked pretty freaking fun to me. This is a game where you play as an octopus, going through like a plant or something like that, the ocean, and like a nuclear waste plant or something like that, based on the trailer. And like at one point you see that you can shoot out ink, and it goes out and like covers a spotlight and like starts spreading in the water, and the effect looks really well done. And then like obviously you're a octopus with like suction cups on your tentacles, so like you can walk on walls and stuff like that. It just looked like a well done platformer, and I genuinely am about that. So like I don't need to see too much more on this. I it'll probably be okay, but like I think it's plays to my interests. And it has a lot of money backing behind it, so I think that it could lead to something better than a normal, kind of just like thrown together platformer. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm interested in it. Darwin's Paradox. We'll see later this year. Still no release date. Next is Warriors Abyss. I don't know anything about this game. It is a roguelike in the Warriors franchise. I've never played a Warrior, or I think Warriors specifically is Dynasty Warriors, which is even worse. I don't care about Dynasty Warriors. All those games are mid. I don't care about roguelikes. You have to have a really good roguelike for me to care about it. And I don't remember anything from Koei Tecmo being good in a long time. So, like, this is not a game I'm interested in at all. And moving on. Next is we come back to it. Onimusha 2, Samurai's Destiny. So this is an interesting one because Onimusha is a game I've never played. They revealed a new Onimusha game at the Game Awards this year, and then they later were like, oh yeah, and we're remastering 1. And then of course this time they're like, okay, and 2. You can also buy 2. So, you're going to have your classic, like, okay, well, we made the graphics look better. They're HD now. Like, we've got new controls that don't suck, that have been modernized. So you don't have to fumble around with controls for a while. I don't know anything about Onimusha. I've never played an Onimusha game. It came out on the PlayStation 2, and I completely missed it as a kid. And I never went back to it because there was no great way to do that. It was kind of locked away on the PlayStation 2. So this is definitely a way of doing that. I think if it's a decent price and, like people are saying, oh yeah, it still holds up, I think I'll give it a shot because like this is considered like a very well-known IP from a long time ago. And that's on May 23rd. We'll get that. Following it up, though, was the much bigger deal here, which was Onimusha Way of the Sword, which is that game that we got shown at the Game Awards. They showed gameplay and like some character interactions, like they showed off the main character, and very surprising because this game was just shown off and was also confirmed at the Game Awards to be a 2026 game. So it's still a ways away. And here we are getting gameplay and like a protagonist reveal and some interactions with him. Like, this just seems really early. Like, it just seems really early to be showing this stuff off. I honestly thought the announcement was a little early, to be quite frank. You really shouldn't be announcing something 2 years before it comes out. But in this instance, it actually looked pretty cool. Like, I actually was like, okay, I kind of want to check this out. Like, I don't know anything about this, but like, it looks pretty cool. The protagonist is a samurai fighting demons, as you do in Onimusha. If you've seen gameplay of it, that's what you do. And in this instance, he seems like a very comedic, like goofy protagonist, which like I love that. like this game could have easily been like a, well, you're just a serious, stoic samurai, and like you're fighting demons in Japan, and that's like what it is, and like that would have been fine, but it would have been way more boring. And like in this case, you just have a lot more personality, you have a lot more character. When like the protagonist is kind of goofy, and like I kind of enjoy that. On top of that, they showed off gameplay, which like gameplay looks fine. I definitely need to see more. But like you saw some executions, they looked cool. And then what really stood out like was he started using stuff in the environment. So like he picked up like a table and like used it as like a shield to shield himself from several enemies. And then like the big thing that stood out the most was he like got a cloth or like a blanket and he threw it at an enemy, and the enemy like started like getting tangled up in the blanket and like couldn't see and like stumbled backwards and like fell. And it was kind of goofy. It was kind of, it looked very realistic, and like it made me go like, oh, there's some interesting stuff you can do with the stuff in your environment, and it makes combat a little bit more interesting. So at the end of the day, I think it looks pretty cool, and I'm looking forward to it. But again, need to see a lot more. But still, Onimusha, Way of the Sword. Next up, Metal Gear Delta Snake Eater. This was the reveal of the announcement date. The reveal of the release date. This was a trailer that was leaked like a week beforehand. I think Microsoft leaked it on their side. So everybody had already seen this. But it's another story trailer. It's a little disappointing that they're not changing much in this game, but I'm really looking forward to it. I mean, Metal Gear Solid 3 is probably like my favorite, if not one of my favorite, like Metal Gear games. And more specifically, like after they released Silent Hill 2 and like that game turned out so well, I mean, it's hard for me to see this game not being cool too. I was very skeptical on that before, because Konami is just like a company you can't really trust. They just had such a shaky past in the past several, like a decade and a half, really, that like, they clearly don't care very much about their video games. And so like, but when Bloober Team was able to make something good, it's like, okay, Konami clearly doesn't want to push out anything or isn't pushing out horrible garbage. So this must be awesome too. So I'm really looking forward to it. Release date, August 28th. 2025. I will definitely be playing it and highly looking forward to it. Next is Hell Is Us, which is very funny. I was watching this presentation and kind of like commenting it on it with like a friend on Discord, and we both were like, is this a Kojima game? It is a weird looking game. Got some very artsy looking things going on. The protagonist looks very Death Stranding-esque, and I have to admit, I thought when I initially started watching the trailer, I was like, I think this is an extension of the Death Stranding 2 trailer. I thought it looked very, like, the protagonist looked like Death Stranding, and it was just so artsy and weird. I was like, okay, yeah, this is Kojima. And then it was like, no, it has nothing to do with Kojima at all. It's like, oh, okay. I can't tell anything about this other than it's an action-adventure game developed by Rogue Factor. So it looks interesting. I'll definitely be keeping an eye on it. But like, if you like something in the vein of Kojima, I think it's really hard to execute something that Kojima does well. But like, if you're hoping for something else in that vein, this game could possibly deliver. Out September 4th this year. But yeah, still kind of mind-boggling there. Next is Lies of P Overture DLC. I didn't play Lies of P. I don't normally get into Souls games very much, so I don't know or care much about this. It is more content for Lies of P. That's cool. I'm sure people would like that. People like Lies of P. I think the concept of Lies of P is really cool at the very least. But like, yeah, I don't intend on playing that to get to the DLC. So little to say from me there. Next is Dreams of Another. Dreams of Another is from the Pixel Junk Studios team. So Pixel Junk is a studio that I've been acquainted with for a really long time. They most notably like are known for like Pixel Junk Monsters, which is like a tower defense game, and Pixel Junk Shooter, which is like a twin stick shooter, kind of. But it's like a PS3 download only game, which is kind of how I got to know them, because they were one of the few people releasing digital only games on PSN back in the day. So like if you wanted a small bite-sized digital game, they were somebody you probably came in contact with at some point on PlayStation. I didn't know they were still freaking around. I have not heard of something they've done in a long time, but here it is, Dreams of Another. It doesn't look anything like, if you're accustomed to their older games like me, it doesn't look anything like it. Dreams of Another seems to be about a guy who's like in his pajamas walking through his dreams, but he has like an AK-47. And as he shoots things, his dreams become reality and like kind of manifest, and, you know, go from like a foggy picture into like something that you can see a lot more accurately. So the fact that you are shooting these like very pretty paintings to make them come to life is like a really stark contrast and very interesting. Clearly going for a very artsy vibe. But yeah, I mean, like, I will have to hear if this game is good or not. It seems like Sony is putting some stock into it, has a PSVR 2 mode. So, I mean, Sony clearly sees something interesting here to show it off. They even had the head of the studio come out and talk about it on the presentation. So, like, clearly they think it's something. I think I need to see, because this could either be really good and like make me cry or something, I don't know, or it's gonna be like boring. I want nothing to do with it. So it really is just a matter of time to see. We don't have a release date yet, just this year, so we'll see. Next is Days Gone Remastered. This is an interesting one because who the frick cares? Just kidding. I actually know several people that think Days Gone is actually like a good game. And this is a game that reviewed underwhelmingly. I think the narrative, the conversation around it is underwhelming, and it sold really, really well. That is the weird dichotomy there, is you put a zombie in any video game and it is guaranteed to sell more units. Kind of crazy how people are just that predictable. But Days Gone is about a guy named Deacon St. John. Somehow I remember that. I played about half of this game and bailed on it, which is very rare for me. So I think that says something. I did not hate the game, though. I think it's an okay game. But it's an open world game, zombie-infested world. You're a biker, and you are out to try and find your lover that you lost during the zombie apocalypse. The Days Gone remaster is very, very similar to how Sony did their original Horizons, the Horizons remaster, in which if you own a copy of the game, you will be able to pay $10 and get that upgrade for $10. Or you can buy it if you never bought it. You can buy it for, I think it's $60-$70, I'm sure, something like that. And then you get the whole thing, the whole shebang right there. I think it's worth noting that if you have this game as a PlayStation Plus subscriber, that does not count. So you are not eligible for that $10 upgrade. It is what it is. I mean, you can just play the original. I really just don't see the big difference between this and the remastered version. So what you get is obviously better, graphics. It looks much better. And then you get the DLC that it released, which I don't remember being a big deal. It wasn't like the Horizons expansion. So like I don't think the DLC is that big of a deal. And then specifically, the other two things that you get are like new modes. So I think there's like a permadeath mode and a like survival mode, which neither of those sound particularly compelling to me, or at least to replay the game completely in those modes. I don't particularly see any appeal personally. So like I don't know. I think if you are foaming at the mouth because you have to pay $10 or you have to pay $60 because you got the free version of this game for PlayStation Plus, I think just you should be fine. Like you're really not missing that much here. And I don't think like this is a game that's like so undeniably missable. Like oh man, you're missing one of the best experiences on PlayStation. Like it's interesting though that they chose this game. Like this is a game that Sony has reportedly shot down any further involvement of. Like the first game ends in a cliffhanger because the studio thought they were going to be making another one, and they talked with Sony about it, and Sony was like, heck no, we ain't making it. Is Bend Studios. Bend Studios, they were like, hey, here's the pitch for Days Gone 2, and Sony's like, F that. Get out of here, big. Like we don't want any of that. So the fact they're coming back with this at all is it's an interesting choice, to say the least. So Days Gone Remastered, that will be out April 25th for your zombie shooting pleasure. Next, Stellar Blade and Goddess of Victory Nikki DLC. I don't know anything about this game, specifically Nikki. So Stellar Blade added again with some more DLC. I mean, that game has impressed me in a lot of ways with its longevity and how much people really seem to enjoy it for more than just like a boobs on a stick lady, like kind of well, more than just boobs, if you know what I'm saying. But like it was clearly a game that was 100% marketed on sex appeal. And the conversation was completely driven around sex appeal. And it continues to have collaborations with big name Japanese IP. I don't know anything about Goddess of Victory Nikki, the game. I do know that it had DLC with Nier Automata, with 2B, which was very appropriate, obviously, since Stellar Blade shared a composer, at least partially, with its Nier Automata. But this I don't know anything about. So it is some like free-to-play game that I've never frickin' heard of and never will play, and that's okay. And I'd love to get around to playing Stellar Blade at some point. I actually enjoyed my time with the demo, but like not enough to drop like 50 or 60 or 70 bucks on it. Like I still don't see that game going below like $40 on a deep sale. So like I'm definitely looking forward to that game being like a PlayStation Plus free game in like a year or two, and then like I'll take a look at it. But like with this DLC, I can't say I'm too enamored. I don't know the IP, and I haven't played Stellar Blade, so like there's no real allure here for me. PlayStation Plus games, they announced a few. I always am big into this because I like to take advantage of those perks. I'm a PlayStation Plus Premium member because I think it's worth my money because I play a lot of those games that they put out there, at least for a little bit, just to get a taste. In this case, we have some Jedi Survivor coming our way, Top Spin 2K25, and Lost Records in Bloom, being the big one. It will be a day one release. It is the new Don't Nod game, and I have no faith in it whatsoever. Lost Records, or Don't Nod, has put out a lot of games. The only one of which I've actually liked is Life is Strange. Don't Nod, everything else they've done has been lackluster, in my opinion, and I have not enjoyed it. So I can't imagine that this is going to be any different. And then, of course, they also said we're going to bring all the Armored Core games, which I still have the newest Armored Core game on my shelf. I got it on a deep sale for Black Friday. Have not touched it yet, but hey, maybe one day. Now, if I want to go back and play all the older ones, I guess I can. And then Patapon 3, which I played the first two. They already released on the PlayStation Plus service for free, and it I I think they're very interesting games. They did not grab me though, and I wanted them to because I like rhythm games. This is clearly a game that was built for a handheld that you're supposed to play in short spurts and play over a long period of time. Back in the PSP days, that's kind of how a lot of those mobile games were being designed. Was like, well, it's a 10 to 15 minute loop, something you play on the bus, and then like you play it over the course of like a year and a half. Like I know Valkyria Chronicles 2 was designed that way, in which like it's like, okay, well, you can do a bite-sized battle that takes 5 minutes, but there's like 500 of them in the game, and it's like, okay, well, that's I am not looking for a game like that right now, or probably ever again. It's definitely a development style that was kind of its time. So, yeah. Patapon 3 as well. Looking forward to trying it out. Don't think it will probably grab me like the first two did. Next is Blueprints. This is an upcoming indie puzzle game. I don't know much about it, but I know a lot of people are expecting this to be like kind of mind-blowing. They're expecting this to be like the Lorelei and the Laser Eyes of this year, or like The Witness, kind of one of those cerebral puzzle games that does something really good and is well designed, that like I think has the potential to review very well. I am not into these kinds of puzzle games. I'm too dumb. My brain don't work no good. So like I'm not particularly attracted to them. So maybe one day, if it's free, I can see what all the hubbub is about. But like right now, I don't have much interest in the Blueprints. But it will likely be well respected if I have to guess. Next is Abiotic Factor. I'm going through these trailers, and I don't even remember seeing this. To be quite frank, it is a 6-player survivor crafting game. I mean, but that's what happens when you have 35 freaking announcements in one presentation over the course of 40 minutes. Like something's gonna get lost. In this case, this got lost for me. So basically, monsters are coming. You're creating a base to survive. Survival action game. 6 players. I'm good. I'm good. I think it is a day one release for PlayStation Plus Extra in the summer. So I will probably be playing it if I had to guess, but I can't say I'm too interested here. Next is Tides of Annihilation. We're kind of getting to the end here. I'm kind of losing steam, but we're still going. Tides of Annihilation. Tides of Annihilation is something that I see a lot of people talking about. It does look good. So what it looks like is a character action game similar to something like Devil May Cry, but like also has a combination of like Shadow of the Colossus and Uncharted. Like in the gameplay, you see your like character kind of shimmying along some like boards and then like climbing these gigantic skyscraper tall creatures. It looked interesting. The combat itself looked very good. Here's the thing is you have to I'm still kind of figuring out exactly what a character action game needs to be to like actually hook me, like Devil May Cry 5 I really didn't like that much, but I really love Bayonetta, specifically 2. I really loved Bayonetta 2. There are some action games that are really hard on the player and really encourage it to, like, you really have to delve into its systems, kind of like a fighting game almost, to appreciate them and enjoy them to the fullest. And then there are some games like Bayonetta 2, which is the reason I like it so much, that's like, okay, we have a system that's pretty, like easy to figure out and easy to execute on, even at a lower level, but you can master it. I think Bayonetta 2 has a much lower ceiling than like a game like even Bayonetta 1 does. in terms of difficulty and like, user comprehension. In this case, I need reviews to come out and say like, yeah, this is a game that pretty much anybody can play. How much the story goes into it could be really good, could be really meh. Like Devil May Cry 5, I kind of had that issue. It was like the story wasn't that compelling to me. So like it was like I was really just playing for the combat, and when it's like, well, the combat isn't really gripping me either because I'm not very good at it. It's like, okay, well then what the frick am I really here for? And like that's kind of what Tides of Annihilation is leading me towards. It's like I don't know. Like maybe this is good, maybe it's not. I have to see more. I really won't be able to tell you until if I'm interested in it until I see like reviews. Really, like that's all it's gonna take. So moving on, Metal Eden. These are the last few games of the show. Metal Eden is essentially Ghost Runner. When I saw it, I was like, this is a Ghost Runner looking game. Which if you don't know what Ghost Runner is, it's like a cyberpunk parkour platforming super twitch fast like game. Essentially. In Ghost Runner you have a one-hit death. And like it's more so a platforming game than anything else. Like think Hotline Miami, but like a platformer, one kill death, one shot kills, and you're running around really fast, and there's a lot of twitch movement, and like I thought Ghost Runner was really cool, and it was also really hard. I am a platforming guy, but I don't like that kind of platforming that's like you need to freaking ingrain these levels into your muscle memory, and that's the only way you're going to make it through this level. Like that's too much for me. I don't want to do that. And so like this game was kind of looking like that, and so like I've heard somebody say like, oh well, it's not just like it's more like Ghost Runner meets Doom. So like there's a lot more emphasis on combat. There's a lot more emphasis on like movement in combat arenas, which like in Ghost Runner that wasn't really the case. It was like there is a pretty much like a specified path for you to beat all these guys, more or less. And if you don't do that, you're going to have a hard time. And in this instance, it looks like it's more of you have a little bit more freedom there. You have a little bit more going on, which I'm all about. So like if you probably put this game in front of me and said, do you want to play this or Ghost Runner? I'd say I want to play this. But like I don't necessarily want to play Ghost Runner at all anymore. Because again, I think it's too hard. So like I need to hear, is this more like Doom or is it more like Ghost Runner? Because if it's more like Ghost Runner, then I really don't want to play it. And if it's more like Doom, then like I don't know, why don't I just go play Doom? Like it's already good. I mean, we have a Doom game coming out this year, which this game comes out almost around the same time as Doom, actually, May 6th. So, like, I don't know. Like, I'd probably just rather play Doom. It depends on which game reviews better, but I'll have access to Doom Day 1 Game Pass, so, it is what it is. Next, Mind's Eye. Now, this was originally a game that I didn't particularly care about, to be quite frank. When I first saw it revealed, I was like, okay, that looks like a open world game, I guess. Like that's cool. And then like I started doing a little bit of research on it, and it's like, oh, it's Leslie Benzies game, which made a lot of sense when I kind of put the two together. So Leslie Benzies is the former lead for Rockstar. So the vast majority of the Grand Theft Auto games that you've heard of, he's either produced or like helped out with significantly. And like also a handful of other titles like Manhunt and Manhunt 1 and 2, Max Payne 3, LA Noire. Like he's kind of the dude who he's done a lot of really good work at Rockstar. Eventually left. He was basically fired by Rockstar. He went on like a sabbatical, and like Rockstar was like, "Yeah, just don't show back up," and eventually sued him, he eventually sued them and won, for like workplace discrimination. So like, I don't know what the frick was going on there, but like, dude never came back and just started his own studio. So, just make his own stuff. He's clearly good at what he does, and made Rockstar a whole lot of money. So like, make himself as that whole lot of money, But this is a sci-fi. Looks like AI significantly incorporated here, but like it looks a lot like Grand Theft Auto. And we don't really get a lot of those games anymore, surprisingly. They used to be everyone and their mother was trying to get in on like, well, we just need another we need to get a cut of that Grand Theft Auto pie. And now nobody does that anymore. They're just like, yeah, those games are probably a little too big to produce, or they're just like, nobody's going to dethrone Rockstar. So just like, let them have that. This looked okay to me. I'm not really interested in a Grand Theft Auto. Like, I am already telling you, like, I'm not that intrigued by Grand Theft Auto 6, Like, I'll probably play it, but, like, I'm not excited for it, Like, I think it seems okay. Like, I've played other Grand Theft Auto games, and I played a lot of games like Grand Theft Auto, and you really need to be providing me with more than just like, well, you can drive a car and crash it into a lamppost, and the police will chase you, and you can shoot a random person on the sidewalk, and the police will chase you. Like you need to provide more to me than that. And it looks like this is trying to probably tell a good story and have a decent universe to kind of add on to that. So far, I am not particularly interested, but the pedigree behind it interests me. He clearly makes a lot of very good games, or has made a lot of very good games that I think, like, you're probably going to have. It's probably going to be pretty good. I think just the talent behind it, just the big name behind it is enough to be like, okay, yeah, that seems pretty interesting. So I'm keeping an eye on it. I can't say I'm particularly interested in it personally, but I think people should be noting it for sure. Next, and finally, the final game of the presentation was Soros from Housemarque Games. So it was very funny. Like I said, I was watching the presentation with a friend of mine on Discord, and as soon as this trailer started showing, I was like, "Oh, that's Returnal. Returnal 2. Returnal 2." For some reason, I was just like, okay, kind of sci-fi shootery guy talking about, I die and every time I come back, and like it just gets harder and harder or something like that. I can't remember the exact wording from the trailer, but like essentially something like that. I was like, what that exactly sounds like, and like what this exactly looks like. Freaking Returnal, like that sounds exactly like that. And what do you know? It was from Housemarque Games, and it's a roguelike shooter. And that's more of Returnal, if I had to guess, which is fine. Returnal was a very well-respected game. I bounced off of it. Like I said earlier, I'm not a huge roguelike guy. And not only that, but I'm also not a huge like difficulty guy. And the Housemarque made both of those and put them in one. I think Returnal is pretty difficult. And like I got about halfway through it, and that was like really giving it my all, like I was like really trying on that, and I was like, this is really hard, and I know it's going to get a lot more difficult, and I don't necessarily I'm not in for that grind, so I bailed. I am looking at this skeptically because, like I said, Returnal, I think it's a well-designed, well-developed game that a lot of people respect. It's the difficulty that kills it for me. And I think that if the difficulty on this game is a little bit more accessible, I will definitely give it a try. I don't know if that's the case yet, though. So in this case, it looks like it's a little bit more desert. Really, that's all we got. It's coming in 2026. So it'll be a while before we see anything about it. That's kind of the horizon picture, like what's over the horizon. And, this isn't something that necessarily blows my mind, but I am glad we're seeing more Housemarque. I am glad we're seeing some more returnal, again, possibly something that I may be more interested in if they add a little bit more accessibility, a little bit more easier options. And that's it. That is all. I mean, I've only been talking about this for like an hour and a half or something crazy. 35 announcements / titles shown. Wow. Again, I said it at the beginning, I thought this was a great showcase. Thought it was a lot of fun. Super fast-paced to a point where I even, like I said, forgot like one or two things that were even in this presentation because it's just so hard to keep up with that kind of a pace. But like there's definitely announcements here that stood out to me. Obviously, a new first-party IP from Sony with Saros is like kind of a big deal. Mind's Eye is like just the pedigree behind that is cool. There's several announcements here that just looked interesting. Like they had the Days Gone remaster. Onimusha, that was a surprise just seeing the gameplay there. It's hard for me to go through this and not say that like there were some significant showings here of some really cool games that like are really up my alley. And even some games that are up some really niche alleys too. So like I can't see this as anything lower than a B for me. Like this is, if we're talking like rating this conference, I will say the more I think about it, the more I'm high on it. So I'd say almost like an A- B+. Like it's really, I really enjoyed it. A lot of these games did cater to my taste. A lot of these games I'm still skeptical on. This wasn't like based on the what I came in here expecting. My expectations were very low, so I was blown away expectation wise. I think this is no E3 presentation kind of level of hype, but it is still really. I mean, it's hard to complain here. I feel like if you're complaining about something here, you just don't know what you're doing. Studs and duds. Let's see. Stud for me. Studs and duds. Leaving Cam's touch on the podcast here. I think, honestly, the thing that I'm most excited about here is Metal Gear Solid Delta. The more I see of it, the more I really like of it. I think that's a little bit of a cop-out, but it's true. I really, really am excited for that, and the more I see of it, the more I really want to play it. Duds, honestly, it's hard to choose a dud here for me. It really is. I definitely have one, but like in my opinion, all of this stuff kind of stands out in a positive way, one way or another. Like either it's associated with a good game or it is a good game. In this case, I'd say Warriors Abyss is the dud. Like I said, I don't give a frick about Dynasty Warriors. All those games kind of suck. It's a roguelike. I don't give a frick, and Koei Tecmo doesn't put out games that are very good very often. So, like, yeah, probably Warriors Abyss. But like I said, it's really hard for me to point out anything that's like, oh yeah, that was just god awful. Normally there's something, but like I think that's a wrap on that. That was exhausting, but like very well deserved. Sony did a great job with that particular showing. So, for the first time in a very long time, I'm going to make a change up on the podcast. I'm going to take a little bit of a break. So for you, it's like magic. Nothing ever happened. I'll be back within a snap of the finger, and you won't know a thing. For me, these podcasts, especially when they go over 2 hours, are exhausting, I've noticed. And like my energy by the end of them is like I'm dead. And they can legitimately be exhausting. So I want to take a little bit of a break, gather my thoughts, my chakra, drink some water, and hopefully come back a little bit more refreshed so that these impressions are a little bit better. So we will get into that momentarily, and I'll see you in the future.
Where have you been? It's been 50 years.
I'm just kidding. Did I get you there? No, it's only been a matter of seconds. Maybe like, I don't know, 15 minutes, something like that for me. Enough time to relax and set up for this next segment, which will be our impressions. I've been playing a lot of games over the past few weeks, and I'm a big narrative game sucker. As I was saying, I believe I made the joke at the beginning of the podcast. This is the picture book, the interactive picture book segment, because you don't do much gameplay in any of these games. All of these games are pretty light on the gameplay, pretty much just moving around and interacting with a narrative, right? I love these kind of games. I think if you have a good narrative, it's honestly a good enough excuse for me to play your game as any. It's just as good as having good gameplay, you know? If anything, I'd really prefer you have both. But like in a narrative-focused game, you obviously gotta have the best, right? You gotta really have something interesting and fun to say. Incorporating the video game medium as a whole is like obviously a huge plus. So I have 3 different games. The wonderful thing about just narrative-focused games is that they're a lot shorter. 2 of the games I'm going to be talking about are just 3 hours long. You can beat them in an evening or an afternoon and get everything out of them you want. One of them I played and platinumed in the span of like 4 hours. So like it's not much of a commitment at all. And these are all games that won awards or were nominated, I should say, that were nominated for some awards. And the first one for last year, the first one I'm going to talk about is where the game that I gave my narrative of the year to, which is Mouthwashing. This was a late entry into last year. I had never talked about it on the podcast because I had not played it until like the week before recording my Game of the Year episode. And it was something that I really enjoyed. I did mention on that Game of the Year episode, which if you haven't seen it, if you haven't heard it, you should check that out. It's a lot of fun. Who doesn't love a good Game of the Year episode? But I said, narrative games were really lacking. For a spoiler, I gave my runner-up of a narrative, best narrative, to Indiana Jones, which, like, I was like, it's just a fun narrative. It's not necessarily a good narrative, but it is a fun one. And I was like, I can't really think of another narrative that I had that much fun with, and so I just gave it my runner-up. I think I have played with these 3 games. I think Indiana Jones is 100% knocked out of the running because they're all good in their own way. Mouthwashing, I gave my Game of the Year narrative to, but I will tell you, it is no longer there. One of these other 2 games that I played, which I will get into in a second, 100% knocked it off the top easily. Blew me away. But Mouthwashing, we'll get into, is a short 3-hour experience horror game that really kind of blew up at the end of last year. And I wanted to talk about, because I hadn't had a chance, obviously, the Game of the Year episodes and stuff like that takes time. But specifically last week, I was talking almost exclusively about Dragon Age, and I really wanted that to have its time to shine and be the focus of that episode, because I think it was important. Mouthwashing, in this instance, Mouthwashing is, like I said, short 3-hour psychological horror game. It's a non-linear experience, so you're jumping around a lot in terms of perspective and time, about a crew that gets sent out into space. They're like a freighting, like a company where they're shipping items back and forth across space, and they're going such large distances that it takes a very long time to get from point A to point B, and they get stranded. Essentially, the ship is sabotaged by the captain, and all of them are essentially left to die in the depths of space. In the process, they learn that the shipment that their lives were all going to be lost to was mouthwash, an entire spaceship worth of mouthwash. And so the entire story is essentially watching everybody slowly come undone under the stress of imminent death and slowly losing their sanity to the point of like some spooky stuff happening. This game is kind of impressive in a lot of ways. Obviously, its writing is something that I think really stands out, specifically with the characters. So the characters, if you've ever seen this game, it's a very low poly game, very minimalistic in its art style. But the characters, even though they don't have that much time to breathe, because like I said, it's a 3-hour game, they feel really fleshed out and complex. And like there's a lot of obviously like blank elements that the game leaves for you to interpret, but like at the end of the day, I felt like I knew who all these characters were. And like I had met somebody like them or know of people like them, and like I felt like they did a very good job for what little time they had to really showcase them. I think this is a game, even though it's short, it uses video games in a way to kind of tell its story in a good way. I think some of the gameplay elements are they drag it down a little bit. You're not really here for the gameplay. Like at one point, there's like a kind of forced, like because of course it's a horror game. You have to have like the required like there's this thing chasing me and I have to avoid it down these corridors or stuff like that. And then there was a handful of small puzzles. They were very, very quick, very easy. Hardly considered them a part of the game at all, to be quite frank. But like I think the stealth segment sucks. But like it again, like you kind of push through it and you're good. Like I don't think it's that big of a deal. Again, what you're here for is the narrative. I think it has where it really stands out is not only is the subject matter interesting and unsettling, and a lot of what happens in this game is like just cool conceptually, but like specifically, there's a really awesome mid-game twist that happens, or not mid-game, but late-game twist that really turns everything that you kind of know about what's been going on in the story on its head. And like if you went back through and played the game a second time, I think you would probably get a lot out of that. Because the game does a lot with its perspective shifts that really kind of messes with how you understand the story. And I love when games have that really clever twist that makes you think very differently about everything you've seen up to that point. And you're like, I see why. Like, I see what you did there, like AI the Somnium Files is probably my favorite example of that. And like, this is pretty similar to what they do there in a way. After that, that's most of what to say without spoiling it. So it just really always, it delivers. It delivers a good short experience that for the price point, which the game is $12. I got it on sale for $12. I think normally it's $15. The twist that you get here, the subject matter that you get here, and the unsettling horror, I mean, it's all well done. I totally get why people latched onto this and said like this is a great game. That was my game of the year, or that was my narrative game of the year. It sounds like there's not a lot to say there, but again, it's a 3-hour game. I don't want to spoil anything, and I really just recommend you go play it for yourself. It's a hard recommend to anybody who wants. Who really was sold on anything that I just said there. Like I said, it's a low commitment in terms of time and price. So, if it sounds like I'm not that over the moon by it, again, we're about to get into some stuff that I'm like, oh, well, it's because I've played so much better stuff, Like I said, I'm about to get into a game that I think is easily game of the year. I feel like it's silly. I have timestamps. You can just read the dang timestamps. And see what I'm talking about. But if you didn't do your due diligence, you're going to be blown away because you're going to be like, oh, now I know what he's talking about when it comes time to talk. But now is not the time because we're going to get into the next game, which is Thank Goodness You're Here. An interesting little title that was nominated for a lot of big awards, not at like the Game Awards, funny enough, but at like DICE and the Golden Joysticks and stuff like that, which are considered to be a little bit more like reputable. Like the Game Awards is just a popularity contest, let's be frank. But those DICE awards and stuff like that, those are a little bit more reputable in terms of how people view them. In this case, Thank Goodness You're Here was nominated for several Narrative of the Year awards and writing, which surprises me. Because this game doesn't have much of a narrative. To be quite frank, this is a comedy game, which you do not see very much of. It is a British game, very British. If you've seen it, it's like everybody there is obviously from the England or somewhere about, and it's architecture everywhere looks pretty British. All the jokes are steeped in British, like culture and stuff like that. It's not like off-putting or anything, but it is definitely very British. It's also very short. Again, another 3-hour experience, so you can beat it in an evening. And then it's a very pretty game, which I think is what really drew a lot of people to it. This is a 2D animated game, and I doubt it is fully hand animated. I would assume it is flash animated, but it is very difficult for this kind of an art style to translate well to the video game medium, because you have to have it interactable. And when you do that, it means that, like certain elements may overlap or do certain things at certain times that, aren't accounted for as a 2D rendered image would be, or a 2D cartoon would be, because obviously every frame is, manually created. In this case, I do think it is a technical achievement to kind of make this an actual full moving motion cartoon. And it's very visually pleasing. I hardly ever saw anything wonky or that looked weird that, prevented me from enjoying the game visually. It really is a visual treat. That being said, the narrative, if you would call it that, for this game is you are a salesman, specifically a very tiny little salesman comparative to everybody else around you, who travels through a town in an attempt to help people with their problems. And that is where the game's title comes from, is you'll find somebody who has a problem and they'll say, "Oh, thank goodness you're here." And you'll begin essentially a quest for them while you're waiting to get in touch with the mayor to sell the town something. Which it has a very Far Cry-esque twist to it, that if you just wait at the beginning of the room for 15 minutes, the mayor will just let you in and the game will end. Which is, it's funny. I get it. But like, the gameplay of this game is you just walking around and interacting with the people and hitting things. Is literally the only thing you can do. And in doing so, like somebody will say something, or you'll interact with somebody and it'll be a bit, and you'll do that by walking around the city or the town multiple times. So you'll basically be going in a loop. And the first time you go through a loop, you'll essentially be introduced to all these different gags, and then the second time you go through, these gags would have evolved. So, like, for instance, there is my favorite gag in the game is you meet or you're trying to get some fish and chips because it's England, and like the fryer is broken, and so in order to get like the fryer working, the mechanic sends you out to get his tools, and he believes that they've been stolen, and so like you'll just come across a random person and they'll have one of his tools, and he'll just pop out of nowhere and be like,
"Oh, I know you took my tool. You're the worst, Roger. I hate you."
And yeah, I mean, like that, and the person's like, "Well, I didn't take your tool," or
"Oh, I didn't take your tool,"
or forgive me. But that's essentially the whole game. And some of these bits work, and some of them are fine. I think the problem with comedy is it's incredibly subjective. This is very wacky comedy, very in your face, cartoony, and more specifically British. If that sounds funny to you, then this game will be good. If you don't think that brand of comedy is your cup of tea, that is somewhat punny, I suppose, but I didn't intend that. If you don't think it's your cup of tea, then you should pass. You should pass on this game. At the end of the day, I thought it was funny. Like, I genuinely did. I think if you're, a 3-hour game, I got the game for under $15. I think normally it's like 20. I think I got my mileage out of it, you know? I paid about $12 for it. And this game really doesn't go on sale. It goes on sale, but it doesn't go deep sales, at least so far, very often. And, 3 hours is really short, but, like, I did get several chuckles out of it. And, like, in all honesty, for any comedy, like, that's rare for me. Like, I don't find a lot of comedies to be incredibly funny, at least, like, to me. So, like, having a 3-hour experience that did get me some well-developed and well-written chuckles is, like, kind of impressive. Like, if we really want to be real. So, like, I enjoyed my time with this game. Am I kind of, like, surprised that this game is being nominated? It has not won anything yet, but it is being nominated in all these prestigious Game of the Year shows for best writing and best narrative. I think yes. I think that is I think that's just a standout of, like, this year was not very great. I think is what that's showing. I think this game definitely deserves to be nominated for best art style, best art direction even, but, like, definitely writing and narrative. I think narrative is crazy. Writing, you can make an argument for. Narrative is insane. So, because there really is no narrative. It's the narrative is literally a joke. To be fair, I think everything leads it up to a culmination of all these jokes kind of coming together. It's not like this ultimate satisfying punchline or something like that, but it does try to kind of wrap everything up in a bow. I appreciated that. I didn't necessarily expect it to be done in any kind of meaningful way, and it really wasn't. But, like, at the end of the day, like, I still enjoyed my time with this game. I thought it was fun. I think you really have to gauge your own personal experience on here. It's like, because, like I said, if you're not into that kind of comedy, if you don't want a game like that, where, like, that's really all you're doing, then this isn't going to appeal to you. Like, there's no way. So I think it's a good game. I think it's interesting it's being nominated for all these awards, but, like, I do think that there's definitely some cool stuff here that people can definitely enjoy. So, you say, Henry, okay, Mouthwashing, it's not as cool as you thought when you gave it Narrative of the Year. Thank goodness you're here. It seems a little overrated, even though I still think that game is kind of cool. What is this narrative game that you've been holding over my head for so long and teasing me with, you freak? That's so good. Well, I'll tell you. And that's a little ditty called 1000x resist, or 1000 times resist. I don't know. I hate it when people put X's in titles, because what the frick are you supposed to do with that X? I don't know. But it's 1000 times resist. I should probably call it X resist, so it's easier for because you have no idea what I'm saying. You don't know what to type into a search bar if I say times. But 1000x resist. 1000x resist is something that absolutely blew me away. It is a game that I heard people talk about from this year. It is much longer than 3 hours. It's like 12 hours. It's like 4 mouthwashings. And it really blew me away. Like, I heard people talking about, oh, this is a great narrative. It's my narrative of the year. I honestly think this is probably in my top 5 games of 2024. Like, if I had to redo my top 5 games of 2024, I think this is likely has a chance of being in the top 5. Genuinely believe that. This is a game that's all about story. There is gameplay, more so than it's about the same amount of gameplay as Mouthwashing or Thank Goodness You're Here. But you essentially are walking around an environment and talking to people. And that's pretty much it. That being said, what you're talking about and the situation you're in is what makes 1000X Resist really, really amazing. I think that this story is something that, I mean, like, I wish all stories in games were like this. It really is. I mean, it takes you on a roller coaster ride throughout its 12-hour narrative and has several major twists. I mean, not just one, but like several. And there's like a mid-game twist that just completely turns everything on its head. And you're just, I remember it left me spinning. I was like, what the frick? Like, how does this make any sense? Like, how did we get here? And then, like, of course, as the game continues, it's like, oh, okay. Like, I get it now. Like, that does make sense based on the rules that have been established within this universe. Like, up to this point, that makes sense. And now I understand. And, like, every chapter, there's several chapters in this game. Every chapter, I was like, oh, dang, that ended on a really cool note. Like, I know this is leading. I got to a point, like almost a third of the way through the game, I was like, I know. Maybe I'm a little bored right now with what's going on in the chapter, which is very rare, by the way. But, like, I know that this is building up to some really cool moment in the story that I know is going to be worth my time. And, like, to be so confident in this game's, like, narrative capabilities so early on, that's astounding. The beginning of this game is absolutely steeped in mystery. You have no frickin' idea what's going on. You are thrown into this society that really doesn't tell you or handhold you into what is happening. You have to figure it out. And you do, just very slowly. Like, every chapter kind of has a focus on, like, well, this is why this is the way it is. And it kind of tells you that in a nice way. I am going to tell you what the first half of the game is about. And you could say that's a spoiler, but, like, I'm just going to say it's not. Like the first half of the game is really you kind of, I mean, the whole game is you unraveling a mystery of this society and what it is and how it got the way it is. The beginning of the game is really you piecing together most of that mystery for yourself through the past and the present and what's going on, because you do go into the past several times in this game to kind of piece together backstories and stuff like that. But because this game has such a monumental twist halfway through it, I think that's where the real story is. Everything else is just lore. And I think you can easily still fully appreciate this game knowing, because I had somebody do this exact same thing. They were like, here's what the story is. And they told me the first half of the game's story. And I was like, when I started playing the game, I was like, oh, well, it's acting like all this stuff is a mystery, but I already know because somebody told me this part of the narrative already. And it's like, well, it doesn't really matter, because honestly, the journey of understanding this stuff is kind of really captivating. And not only that, but, like, then I got to a point where I had finally caught up with that synopsis, and I was like, oh no, this story is still, like, a banger. Like, it's still going and going and going, and I can't wait to see how it continues. And so I feel like it's definitely, because who the frick cares about 1000X Resist right now? Nobody gives a frick. Like, it is, there's, like, the hardcore community for this game screaming it from the rooftops. But, like, the game kind of looks a little jank. It looks like it was made by a small team. It looks a little rudimentary. And so I think when people look at it from a surface level, they don't see a lot of what is going on in it, because the trailers aren't very descriptive in that way. And they don't see an art style that really resonates with them either. So, like, you're left with, like, well, what is this game about, and why would I care about it? And you like, the only way you can really sell somebody on it is telling them what the story is, and you can't do that without spoiling half of it. So like I said, this is, to me, not a spoiler. But if you are really trying to go into this game with no information, tap out now, go buy the game, play it, you will enjoy it. Promise. For those who still need some help in terms of understanding what's going on here. 1000X Resist is about a futuristic world. Not futuristic, modern. It's modern. It's about our society, but aliens invaded. And when they did, they brought a virus. And that virus slowly but surely killed off everybody on the world except one girl. And so this girl then makes an entire civilization. She gets lonely, essentially, and makes an entire civilization that are clones of herself because she's the only one who won't die from this virus. So in the process, she leaves. For some reason or another, she leaves these clones to their own devices and goes off on her own. These clones then structure a society based on themselves, essentially. They continue to clone themselves and make more of her, essentially, and divide themselves into different factions that are supposed to keep society running. So they have Healer, the Healer faction, which are all led by a specific one like leader of each faction, which is the main characters of the game. Healer, which is like the medics, they're responsible for making sure everybody's healthy and creating more clones. Fixer, who essentially fixes all the technology in the civilization, or all the appliances and stuff like that. Knower, who's essentially the librarian. They know a lot of things. They're the intelligent peoples. Bang Bang Fire, which is the only one with a really interesting name, but they're essentially the defense people. The police, you could say, the army of this society, and Watcher, which is essentially the historian. They have the ability to see the memories of the past and see exactly what happened to essentially, the society and how it got to the way it is. This original clone that left becomes a god in the eyes of these people. They've cloned each other so many times and been through so many generations of people that they then see her as a god. So the game starts off with Watcher and Fixer, who are lovers. Fixer gets sent off to meet the original clone, or the original person who made all the clones. They every so often send one clone over to her to meet her on the other side. And nobody knows what happens after that. Well, Fixer comes back and tells Watcher, who's a devout religious person who worships this original clone and views her as a god, that she's actually not a very good person. They've all been tricked. They've all been duped. It's nothing like what they've been told. And Watcher goes to their authority, and because she's so devout, reports Fixer, and Fixer is executed. Because she is now a heretic. She's considered a heretic, and she's killed. Watcher then starts going through all these memories. She's a newly appointed head of the Watcher Society. So she starts going through all these memories and starts to learn, oh, frick. Yeah, actually, our God, we've kind of been lied to by people for a long time, and it's a little bit more complicated what's going on here. And not only that, but our God, she's kind of an a-hole. She's never really been a nice person. And maybe I'm kind of worshiping and doing the wrong thing with my life. And I had my frickin' my romantic partner killed because of this. So that should already be really cool, right? So it's essentially the progression of Watcher trying to figure out exactly what has happened, how the society got to this place, and how she comes to reconcile with that. Which, I'll let you start the game for yourself, but you do learn very quickly that the game opens with how Watcher decides to reconcile with that. And then after that, the game completely does a 180, and has a complete twist that blew me away. I was like, what the frick is going on? I'm not going to spoil any of that. That's not worth spoiling. And like I said, everything I just told you, all you're really spoiling is the mystery, which is told to you over the first several chapters. In most games, I think the first half of this game would have just been the whole story. That's like all it ever would have been. And, it would have stopped right there. Credits would have rolled, and you would have, patted yourself on the back and said, good job. That was a fun time. And you probably would have been satisfied, and you probably would have, given it 4 out of 5 stars on Steam and been happy. Because this game keeps going, because this game continues to do such a good job just absolutely stunning the player with what's happening in front of them, and giving them such good narratives, or good characters, good narrative twists, like just an interesting scenario as it is. Like, it's hard for me to say, like, this game didn't go above and beyond. I would say the themes for this game are really cool. There's not really decisions. You do end the game on one big decision where you basically get to decide how the world turns out at the end of everything, kind of what everybody's fates are that you've met throughout the game. I think that's really I think you should highly be encouraged to talk to everyone in this game, because as the narrative progresses, so do these people. Like, even characters that I thought were like throwaway characters that were minor and had really no meaning to the narrative overall, end up being some kind of significance for whether it be like another side character's story or like a main character's story or something like that. It really is impressive. It really is impressive. It's a fully voice-acted game. I really appreciate that. It's hard to get into a lot of these narrative games when it's not fully voice-acted. I think it's a little melancholy. It's a little broody, especially in its delivery of the voice acting. But it's, I still think it's really, really fantastic. Every chapter is about an hour, and you really end up feeling like you have been on this wild roller coaster ride by the end of it. This is easily my game of the year, or not game of the year, but narrative of the year for 2024. Easily. There is no narrative that I've played in, honestly, several years that has come close to touching this. This is the kind of narrative that I wish I could get every time I played a video game, or at least like half of the time, or a quarter of the time. I mean, like I'm desperate that I play a narrative-driven game, and I think it easily makes its way into the top 5 of my games of last year too. Like, it's really just that good, and I hope I've convinced you to check it out. That's it for the impressions. This has been a long one. I didn't expect it to be that long, but that's what happens when you have 35 games to talk about in the state of play. Holy crap. I am exhausted. If you couldn't tell, I even took a break, but at one point, this recording got completely lost, so I had to redo it. So I'll let you at home try to piece together where I lost the recording and had to start re-recording things that I had already talked about for like an hour. So that is always fun. But I will leave you with that, sir. Or madam. I'm not here to discriminate, hopefully. I know by my analytics that it is definitely majority male. But, you never know. We keep the door open for the ladies out there. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Plug in Play podcast. I am going to go rest my throat and maybe play a video game too. And I hope you do the same. Maybe you don't need to rest your throat, but I hope you definitely play a video game, and I hope you have a good day playing that video game. Bye-bye, everyone. Have a good one. Bye-bye.